That's why we brought the expert right now.
Awesome.
Instead of hearing from a non-nuclear guy about ranting about nuclear.
And we are going live on YouTube as well.
Awesome.
Oh, very good. Do you want to share it on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Okay. I can forward it if people want to jump
That's why
in.
we brought the expert right now.
Awesome.
Instead of hearing from a non-nuclear guy about ranting about nuclear.
Let me, and we, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I will share the link.
Are you sharing on WhatsApp or LinkedIn?
Here. Did you get it? I'm sharing it on this
The
chat.
YouTube link. Okay. In
Yeah.
this, well, chat. Okay. I can copy and paste. That's fine. Yeah.
Or I can share it on WhatsApp.
Yeah. WhatsApp is better.
Okay.
Nice to see Ved in here. Good to see you. Ved.
Yes.
Hi.
Is Ashwini on the road, Ravi?
Let me unmute. No, she's in the process of joining. We both are.
Tag team.
Yeah, she's joining anytime soon. Yeah.
Okay. No worries.
So we're gonna have time for Q&A, Vatsala?
Yes. And you
Yeah,
can
lots.
put your comments in the chat, questions, so that Muthu is going to do the fireside. So we could also take it there.
Did you get a haircut? Yeah, looking good.
We should wait for 2-3 more minutes. I'm just putting it everywhere.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just telling a friend of mine to attend this webinar. I said it's just in time with what's happening, in Iran, Iran and Israel, that whole nuke thing. So
Wow, Dr. Kothari is joining.
Wow, this is great.
Yeah. He's a nuclear expert. He's a thorium expert in particular.
Yeah, admitting all.
Dr. Kothari, thanks for joining.
Thanks for joining. We are like honored to have you here.
He said he was traveling, so maybe he's.
No, yeah, thank you. I thought it was 6 p.m. PST, but it turned out 6 p.m. EST.
Yes.
So I'm okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Should we start?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Lalita, you can probably start.
And the recording has been started, right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, welcome everyone. Good afternoon, evening, wherever you are, like whichever time zone. To each one of you who's joined this webinar today, and is instrumental in adding energy to this exclusive session about nuclear energy. So to start with, a brief intro about ASCI. So ASCI, which is the American Society of Engineers of Indian Origin. So yeah, the slide. So ASCI provides a networking platform for engineers and technologists and nurtures the next generation of engineers to develop an interest and excitement in STEM fields. So that's next slide. So here, this is our dynamic team of the ASCI Michigan chapter. And moving on. Yeah, and this is the national team. And we do have a huge presence from Michigan as well on the national team. And like I said, ASCI is about, like, the core is about really networking. So this is these are some of the glimpses of the ASCI events. And we will be posting the link in case you want to become an ASCI member. We will be posting the link in the chat. I would encourage you to really become an ASCI member. So this is one of our upcoming events, which is the ASCI picnic, which is on July 12th in Mayberry Park, where we will have lots of excitement, food, and loads of fun. So do plan on being there. We will be coming up with the details very soon.
And you can invite all your friends and everyone. We just want everyone
This
there.
event is open for everyone. Yeah.
It also planning to bring some of the founding members from the Michigan area, and as well as whoever is in the Midwest who is able to travel. So also it'll be a good networking event to meet people who are connected with the ASCI for a long time.
Yeah, the more the merrier. And this is one of the really interesting series that has been happening, and Dr. Raj Vedam's series. So the episode 3 is going to be there on June 26th. So do register for that event. And here are some of our in-person events that are coming up. Ankur Singh's bridge project, where we'll be talking about the bridge project in which he was involved. Pritain Modi has something interesting to share with us as well. And then we did meet a really interesting guy called Debashish Sahu. He will be talking about smarter homes, smaller devices, the future is embedded. So these are some of our events. And then we have the Youth Technology Exposition. Like we said, we do want the next generation to be excited about the technology and engineering and science. So we do have the Youth Technology Exposition that we are planning to do later this year. So moving on to today's event, which is the new age of nuclear, powering progress safely and sustainably, which is a really important topic of discussion. So in the atom lies the future, clean, powerful, and precise. Nuclear energy is progress engineered for a safer, sustainable tomorrow. So my friend Vinod Chugh, who is my batchmate from IIT Delhi, is an expert in this field and I met him recently at the reunion, and I thought I've got to grab this opportunity to get him here to talk about nuclear energy. He is a veteran energy strategist and a nuclear consultant with over 34 years of experience in advanced nuclear systems, decarbonization strategies, and infrastructure development. So he was in chemical engineering at IIT Delhi, and then he has held leadership roles in NPCIL, Ontario Power Generation, Bruce Power, BWXT, Kairos Power, and Moltex Engineered Energy. He currently serves as a board director at the Organization of Canadian Nuclear Industries and leads Power Generation Integrated. His advisory work spans North America, Europe, Australia, and Asia, covering advanced reactor deployment, nuclear safety systems, and the integration of nuclear with hydrogen, industrial decarbonization, and energy resilience. So he is a trusted voice in the clean energy transition, and he brings a unique blend of technical depth, strategic foresight, and practical insight into today's most pressing energy challenges. So Vinod will be presenting, and then we will have a fireside chat where Muthu, who is a nuclear energy enthusiast, he will be asking all the the questions which all our curious minds really want to know. And you can put in your questions in the chat, and Muthu can take care of that as well. So we will first have Vinod, present, and then the questions. So keep posting your questions, and then we will tackle the questions as once Vinod gets through the basic stuff. Okay, over to you, Vinod.
Thank you, Lalita, for the nice introduction, and greetings to all of you. Thank you for joining. Thank you to ASEI for organizing this event, in particular Lalita, Vatsala, and Muthu. I think Lalita has told everything about me, except one thing I want to share, that the purpose of creating Power Generation Integrated was around, it was twofold. One was education, outreach, training, and mentoring for the industry that wants to get into the nuclear sector, as well as the general public, new engineers, students who wants to understand about nuclear, why it is getting so much attention nowadays, and why it's so difficult to kind of execute the plans, and why we are so critical about some of the aspects of the nuclear, which we can follow up later on. And the second aspect was working with the various investors and developers to help them understand lay of the land in terms of the regulation, supply chain ecosystem, because it's a very unique and very small industry, but it's making a huge impact on the clean energy sector across the world. So I'll start sharing my presentation now, and then quickly go through the basic stuff as Lalita mentioned. And then what we can do is follow up with the questions. So I want to make it very interactive type of session. So please feel free to ask questions, because that's where you will learn more about how things can be changed in the nuclear era, and why some of the things are not happening, and what needs to be done across the board to make nuclear even more rewarding and successful. So in terms of why nuclear, everyone is talking about nuclear nowadays. Even some of the war that is happening, there's the mention of the nuclear weapons and all. The basic thing is that because of the climate action, climate urgency, if we have to achieve net zero, there is no other resilient clean energy technology in near future that can meet those needs. So when I look at the energy and grid and infrastructure, you look at some of the examples, recent failures in Europe, grid failure. Texas had suffered quite a bit. Initially, many policymakers thought that we can produce lot of wind and solar and battery, and then we are good. No, that's not how the grid works. Grid needs at least 30 to 40% of a stable 24/7 type of reliable load. And if we look away from fossil, like gas and coal have been doing that for century or so, but now we have to transition from that. And from that point of view, nuclear power can do like for at least 60 to 80 years, 24/7 reliable, very robust energy source. And that's why it takes a lot of efforts in setting it up. Because the good things don't come easily. That's the law of life or fundamental. Every wonderful things take a lot of effort to be successful. Now, let's look at the power density in this chart. Nuclear, this power density versus footprint, how much space is required for per basically per watt per meter square. So you look at the nuclear, it's almost double that of natural gas. So you need half of the space that's required for natural gas to produce same power. And then coal also is like almost 40% of nuclear. And if you keep on going down, solar and wind is like pretty much you need lot of land or surface to generate that much power. And hydropower, as you know, lot of displacement. And if you look at the general landscape, we have pretty much tapped the hydropower that was available easily closer to the cities or population of densities or industries. If we want to produce more hydropower at the bulk scale, we need to move away from the population centers, and also setting up those takes years and years. But once those are set up, they're good for almost 100 years. So that's a given. So given all these dynamics that are happening and we want to reduce carbon footprint, at this point, fission nuclear is the way to go. So what's changed in nuclear technology? So when we talk about nuclear, there's a lot of discussion around Fukushima, Chernobyl, and even 3 Mile Island. Those were accidents, agreed, but those accidents have made the nuclear industry very robust. We learned so much lessons from that our infrastructure, the support system, or the accident prevention and mitigation system, that has been fortified in a way that going forward, right now we have 600 water-cooled reactors operating across the world. There are other technologies also like sodium-cooled, lead-cooled, the molten salt reactors, but those are very minor, like I would say more at the experimental or little bit of development stage. So at this point, the proven technology is the water-cooled, and the generation 4 is the reactor technology that will be required for process heat, hydrogen production, decarbonization of various steel and fertilizer industries. That's down the line. But at this point of time, small modular reactors, which are also scaled down version of large reactors. Large reactors are normally 1,000 megawatt electrical, which can feed a population of around 800,000 people. Small modular reactors are less than 300 megawatts, so almost 1/3 or less than 1/3 of large reactors. By modular, it means they can be built in shop and shipped to site, so less assembly required at site, which is the most, what you call, contributing factor for delays in nuclear power plant. The new safety systems, you don't need power or energy to energize those. So basically, it's a passive kind of safety system. The fundamental principle of the nuclear power plants is 3C. So by that, I mean control, cool, and contain. So everything you do in the core of the nuclear reactor, you control the power or you control the fission that's happening. And once you control it, then whatever energy or heat is generated, you need to cool the fuel. And once you have that in balance, then you can have a generation of power and various heat sources and all. And then if there is any transient or any event that's leading to spread of activity, you contain that within the plant or within certain area of the plant, which is called reactor building. So that's the fundamental foundational element of the nuclear power plants. So by that you mean at the end of the day, if everything fails, if you are able to cool the fuel, nothing can go wrong. So from that point of view, what the industry has done, there are centralized alternate generators, cooling systems that can tap into the local bodies of water like river or sea and keep dumping water into the core, and then nothing goes wrong with that. So that's the ultimate objective. But the scenario for that is very what you call rare. If you look at the number of years reactors have operated, like 600 reactors, so say on an average 30 years. So 18,000 years of reactor operation in light water, we have 1.5 accidents. So one is Fukushima, that was a full-fledged accident, and half, I would say, near miss in 3 Mile Island, which is being restarted again with support from Microsoft. So it's a very inherent safety. If you look at the other industries, other energy, and look at the death rate per gigawatt, nuclear is still the lowest. It's just there is a lot of hype around nuclear that it's dangerous for human beings or nature or environment. But if you look at the fundamental figures, it's an order of magnitude better in terms of human death or loss of life because of nuclear accident or operation. So you can look up anywhere, you will find that data. So that's and with the new technologies like high computing power and multi-physics modeling, we have been able to do all these simulations, which makes it very competitive from CapEx point of view. Construction, you can add on new modules of reactor if you need more power. So that's the upcoming small modular reactor concept, which leads to quicker deployment across the board. So applications, so far everyone thinks that it's just for power production, like you can connect it to the grid and you tap into grid or behind the meter, you get power. But when you look at broadly, nuclear has been used for water desalination, like seawater desalination, district and process heat. We have been making synthetic fuel. After all, anything that touches heat, power, and energy, nuclear can supply it. And the advantage is that it can supply reliably for a long time without any interruptions. Oil refineries are trying to use nuclear power as a co-located source of energy that's required. There's a lot of research going on with NASA that how we can have an outer space mission with nuclear powered small reactors, and also like surface based reactor on moon or Mars, where we want to populate those areas for future development or mining. So there's a lot happening from that. Ship propulsion, marines, submarines, they're all many of those are nuclear powered. So cogeneration is another area. Like if you have excess nuclear power, you can produce hydrogen, you can produce other heat for other applications. So multitude of application that is being discussed right now. But the fundamental we have is that we need to basically reinvigorate the supply chain ecosystem, because if you look at the United States, we haven't built a reactor for last many years except Vogtle that was built recently. So there's momentum needs to be built with certain technologies that are proven. But in terms of application, once the supply chain ecosystem is there, it has endless way of decarbonizing various sectors. In terms of the current projects, so TMI, as I mentioned, 3 Mile Island, that was shut down long back. So there's a plan to restart and extend its life, which is a right approach. When you look at the nuclear in Canada, also around 20 odd reactors, their life is being extended by another 20 to 30 years. That's the easiest way to sustain nuclear, because when you compare the cost between new nuclear versus extending the life of existing asset, it's almost 50% or maybe 2/3. So the value for money in terms of managing the existing asset, that's the first step. And meanwhile, we plan for new plants, new locations across the board. And this has been done before. It's not something new. As I mentioned earlier, 600 reactors were built between 60s to 90s. So across the world, USA built around 110 reactors, power plants. So we did that, and it's just that the right now momentum has been lost, and somehow we have been thinking too much before getting into just execution strategy and all. Tech industry is supporting nuclear, but it's still, I would say, in piecemeals. There is not much coherent approach in terms of selecting one or two technologies and running with it. So that's an area to address. Canada has done particularly well in terms of life extension, and there's already small modular reactor under construction, about 70 miles from, well, not even 70, 50 miles from my place. So that's happening, but it's slower than what I like to happen. But it's all that we can do right now. But as a public member, as all the listeners on this webcast, I would say you should speak to your leaders or your representatives and explain about why it is needed and why it is important. And if you need any material or any justification, I can give you unbiased information why it's so important, and we are missing the point at this point. India, China, because of their need and growth and population, they're well positioned for growth, but the Western world is kind of falling behind if we don't take major steps in next 2 to 3 years. In terms of the public concern, I know people talk about waste management and all. If you look at every other industry, nuclear is the most well managed in terms of waste. We don't throw away anything, not a single piece in garbage or away. We basically compact it. The fuel, we have a special containers, which is fireproof, which is any bomb proof or anything. It can be easily transported from one place to another. That's our interim strategy to store the fuel. And why we are doing as an interim? Because once the fuel is out of the reactor, it still has 96% of the uranium energy left in it. We're just using 3 to 4% in one operation cycle. So that fuel will be reprocessed in future. New technologies are being developed. And in my opinion, this is like the waste management concern. I fully agree, it's not fully addressed, but it's not even that we are throwing these things into public domain or environmental domain that to impact anything out of impact our day-to-day life or even long-term life strategy. So there's a lot of transparency. We keep aside around 8 to 10% of revenue for waste management. No other industry does that. So nuclear is the only exception. There are good reasons, but all designs, when we start with licensing and construction process, the waste management and decommissioning is already accounted for in CapEx and OpEx. So it's already part of the design, and no other industry does like that in a systematic way. So from that point of view, I think the public opinion is very critical, and that's the only thing that cannot be expedited. When you're building a new nuclear power plant in certain city or in certain backyard, you need to convince them, talk to them few years before you start planning for the project. That's the only thing we have to be very careful, particularly in democratic world and developed world. People are very well informed or sometimes misinformed. And you need to make sure they are convinced about having a nuclear power plant in their backyard. Once that part is done, everything else is all about the policy and the finance. The technology or regulation is not an issue at all. It's just misrepresented across the world that is being delayed because of the design or because of the regulator. No, Is the public opinion number one, and then having a firm policy for 15 to 20 to 25 years. No one is touching that policy, supported by public financing, at least for the first 15 years if you are a new country. In US, I think the way I look at it is mostly it has to be funded by federal or state programs. And even I go to the extent that it should be treated like a federal defense program, because it's not less than that. Energy reliability, security is as important as your defense. So we should fund it like a defense program. Nothing can stop it. It's a collective leadership failure in terms of why we are lagging behind. And eventually, I think with publics, with people like you, I'm talking to, I talk about these things in every conference, wherever I go, and try to convince people or tell them, like, there's so much misinformation. We need to clear that and have policymakers listen to it. Lots of workforce. Nuclear industry is very good employer for full life. Many people spend their whole life, 30, 40 years with one employer, because it's so kind of attractive from stability point of view, not from innovation point of view, but because there are certain reasons within operation you want to keep the lights on. It sometimes becomes thankless job, because if you look at all the things that are happening, for the people who are working hard to keep the lights on at any cost in terms of spending extra hours and all. And it's not very well paid industry, but it's very well satisfying for helping the society grow and sustain in many ways. So lots of collaboration required. And you saw the recent announcement or executive order from the president that by 2050, we want to have the fourfold increase. What that means, if we use the first 10 years, 2025 to 2035, as a modest growth, mainly for planning, selection of sites, getting local public opinion in favor, then 2035 to 2050, we need to make 15 to 20 large reactors every year coming online, connecting to the grid, like commercial operation. That's the scale we are talking about if we are really serious about decarbonizing various elements of the industries. Why this matters to everyone? Because you're supporting our sustainability goal. Everyone has a role, because it's important. Like, fortunately or unfortunately, we are spoiled with the choices. We are very lucky in this part of the world that we have choices. Because if nothing works, we have a natural gas to fall back on, or coal to fall back on. But some parts of the world, they don't have choices. So think globally and think US as a leader, Western world as a leader in decarbonization. So if we don't step up our task, then I think we are basically falling way behind in terms of the global warming and natural effect, counter effects, or nature may itself try to recorrect everything. And then we can just sit and watch, because there's nothing we can do. So it's very critical that we convince ourselves first. If you have question, ask, and then once you are convince your family members, your policymakers, your leaders, because it's a collective effort. We have to make this happen. Otherwise, we cannot leave this to the market to drive nuclear energy, because the return on investment takes like 10 years as a minimum. But once it starts, it's good for 70, 80 years. People don't realize that, but the tech industry basically thinks it's like a rollout. It's a software rollout. It doesn't work like that. You have to think differently when you are in nuclear or energy sectors. So looking at the nuclear share, France is the leader, almost 60%. So this is the older data. I wanted to show Germany before they shut down everything in 23, there was 6%. So in 23, they shut down everything. And this year they have declared they are restarting everything. So within 2 years, they changed their opinion. Why? Because they saw, because of the geopolitical risk, as well as the recent grid failure in Spain and Italy, because they were running on wind and solar, which can really fail upon you if the conditions are not favorable. So as I mentioned, 30 to 40% minimum is required, either nuclear or some other hydropower. If you have that, not every area has that. India and China picking up very low numbers still, but they're picking up very fast. South Korea is a good share. Russia, of course, is very proactive and agile in terms of deploying new nuclear power plants. So that, I think, sums up my general overview. And I think I want to make it more interactive. I'm sure Muthu has some questions or some screened out, and then well, I won't even screen out if it is serious question. I'm happy to answer. If it's trivial, if you think it's trivial, no, I'm happy to answer that. Thank you for the listening to me.
Thank you, Vinod. You summed up very, very nicely. You guys can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Perfect. You summed up nice on the benefits of nuclear and why nuclear and what's various countries are following. Maybe to start with, just even for the younger generations to listen, what got you interested in nuclear, and how's your professional journey got interwoven with nuclear?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, as Lalita mentioned, IIT Delhi 1990 chemical engineering campus interviews. On those like only option was to get a job, correct? Like we didn't used to think about what is my passion and what I like. It's all about, because sometimes it depends upon your family background, how well to do your family is. So your priorities are based on that. So I had two options. One was Nuclear Power Corporation of India Limited. The other was Pfizer. And somehow at that point in 90s, there was a lot of discussion around new nuclear programs, excuse me, in India. And also there was a lot of tendency for getting a government job, correct?
Yeah.
We used to think, okay, get a government job, huh? Other things are not stable. But I'm glad I decided to go nuclear, because that's where the whole development started as a design coordinator, going to the field, looking at the equipment, whatever we studied. Uh, that was eye-opener, and ended up as design authority for Kota nuclear power plant. So right from ground up to a greenfield to a new nuclear power plant commissioning. And then I started looking outside India, what's happening, what's the new technology. So I've understood everything. So there were a lot of development in Canada around new type of reactors. So I said, okay, let's try that. So believe it or not, without any job, without any link or anything, my wife and I, two kids, we just packed our bag and got our PR and said, okay, let's try that. And fortunately, there were lots of people from IIT here, and they referred me. And then within 6 months, I was well up and running again. But it was mostly around the operational support of nuclear power plant. Again, another aspect. When you are building, it's a different skill set. When you're operating, you're keeping lights on, so minimal changes, no risk. But that gives you a constraint. Like within those constraints, how can you operate a plant so that it doesn't fail upon you? Lots of pressure. So I learned new set of skills. That happened like almost 12 years. And then the other thing I noticed was that nuclear industry is very self-contained. Like we just keep on talking to ourselves, like learning lesson, but we don't reach out and tell others how it can do wonderful things for rest of the world, or how we can expand our toolbox. So then I started looking for something else, like advanced nuclear technologies, generation 4, molten salt reactors. So I joined Kairos Power, went to USA in California for a couple of years, developed their concept. And one of the things I found in our culture, that we master things very quickly. Our skill set, in a way, is very broad and multi-skilled mentality. It's just the upbringing we have in back home in India, but that was helping me here, like to look at things from all perspectives. And then I created my own company, and here I am in terms of educating, outreach, as well as consulting with investors and developers.
Wonderful. Actually, for people who are not familiar with the nuclear industry, your profile kind of sums it up all, right? So you started with the nuclear industry in India, then you came to Canada, and then Kairos Power and some of the other technologies and the companies that you worked for, they're supposedly the new age, right? New kids on the block are using new technology, the Gen 4 reactors and so on. So that's quite impressive. So your profile really helped you go from conventional nuclear to new nuclear and new technologies, and now you are part of the Canadian Organization for nuclear companies and industries. That's wonderful. So here, maybe I'll start off with something local. Again, many people may or may not have realized that Michigan, we have in Western Michigan, we have a nuclear power plant that was shuttered, called a place called Palisades, right? So it's interestingly, it went through common, I would say, misunderstanding or misinformation that, hey, there's some defective equipment. The operator didn't want to continue with it anymore. It was not making economical sense. They shuttered it. Luckily, although a little bit late, Michigan Governor Whitmer intervened and they applied for some federal grants. And interestingly, a plant that was going to be decommissioned, which means they'll take another 5 to 10 years to completely tear it down. Now they are actually restarting the plant. So it's going to create more jobs in the Western Michigan area, as well as carbon-free power, right, back to the grid. So that's a good news. But my question is, when it comes to restarting or extending a life of a nuclear power plant versus starting something new, I mean, both have pros and cons, right? I mean, do you know anything about the Palisades? Does it have any risks involved? Because they're going to be closed now, it's reopening, like 3 months.
Yeah, as I think alluded to earlier, when you have an existing asset that is performing reasonably well, in a nuclear power plant, the central core, the reactor vessel, which is containing the nuclear fuel, if that is not damaged, you can replace everything else. So the best strategy, when I did the Darlington refurbishment, we call it, or life extension, some people. So I was leading the strategy for 30-year life extension with 95,000 component. So my team did the technical feasibility assessment, and based on that, we have to decide which component needs to be replaced or repaired or overhauled. And then we have to look at supply chain and all the strategy. So I developed that strategy for Ontario Power Generation. The bottom line is, if you do the math, if you add up all the cost and the time that's required, restarting or upscaling or extending the life of existing nuclear power plant is much cheaper than building a new power plant for the same capacity. So that's the short answer. But it involves a lot of planning and analysis before you decide that. But the bottom line is, usually it's cheaper. You should do that first, and then you plan for new nuclear as your additional capacity requirement.
Sure. So many parts are replaceable, repairable, and you already have a permit. You don't have to go through the process, etc.
That's correct. And people are familiar with the plant, and it's much easier.
Sure.
Yeah, just to interrupt, Vinod, can you stop the share of your screen so that both you and Muthu are visible on screen?
I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Is it stopped now?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
It's good. It's good right now. So the other question, when it comes to nuclear, the general, I would say, apprehension people have is about, hey, Fukushima. Of course, the whole country, like Germany, like you mentioned, they stopped abruptly. They're all of the nuclear power plants in the next couple of years. So I know as a nuclear enthusiast, it's not all that scary to me, at least when you really go into the details. But for the public, if you want to at least address on what are the lessons we learned. Of course, Fukushima, like you said, was a double whammy, right? It was earthquake and a tsunami. I mean, what can you do? Poor nuclear power plants, right? Anybody wouldn't have survived. But what are the lessons we learned? Because we have many places that we have nuclear plants right next to the water bodies, like oceans, for example. To summarize, what are the lessons we learned?
So it was a very critical juncture for the nuclear industry as a whole. And one of the key issue that happened in Fukushima was because of it wasn't the earthquake. Earthquake shut down everything, and we were able to do the 3 Cs,
Yeah.
the control, cool, and contain. But when the tsunami flooded the generators that were required to supply the cooling to the fuel,
Yeah.
that stopped everything. And at the same time, we lost the monitoring. Like we weren't able to see anything, what's happening. So where
Mhm.
to supply water? There's a spent fuel storage bay that was heating up. So all these lessons just taught us that these we call beyond design basis accident. So we have design basis accident. This incident was looked at as a beyond design basis. So as a part of this, we developed like flood preventer, so like flood barriers across the plant, so that if anything comes, Japan knew about that the tsunami could come. They had a design ready to raise the height of the wall, but they didn't implement it, or somehow the management thought we can wait. It's just the financial or business budget. But that doesn't excuse us that we shouldn't do some of and also in all of the US now there are centralized like way away from the plant, centralized diesel generators, water supply system like pipings and cables. And we have provided hookup systems in the plant. If any flooding still takes place, we can quickly send, because for 6 or 7 days, it's not a problem.
Mhm.
Like you can remove the decay heat and all. So those 6 and 7 days you use to transport your emergency equipment from your centralized facility, like Midwest has one and the and other areas. So for 4 or 5 plants, you have a one emergency setup, which is way beyond the flooding area on the hill or mountain, which cannot be impacted by any of these common events that can happen. So that's what we have learned. And then monitoring, we have improved with backup monitoring system, like battery system and all. So lots of improvement, and that's why I'm saying the current fleet of water cooled reactors, whether it's Westinghouse, GE, Hitachi, or South Korea, China, is very well oriented for growth. And
Mhm.
we need to focus on that right now rather than trying something new as a starting point for new nuclear.
Okay, great. You alluded to earlier when you had this multi-countries chart, and India, China are catching up. India is right now, their power generation comes like only 3% of power generation comes from nuclear, and China is probably closer to 5. But China is leading the entire world when it comes to building these nuclear power plants like nobody's business. And India also, I think, interestingly, has very ambitious plans. And I read somewhere by 2047, by India's centenary celebrations, they want to get closer to 100 gigawatts. I think right
Yeah,
now they're at 8 gigawatts.
yeah.
So like almost, they really multi-fold, like 12 times or more. Um, but for India, we all have a lot of links back to India. I also watched closer where I come from, a place called Tirunelveli, the Kudangulam power plant
Yeah,
went through so many objections, and now it's functioning very well, right? So we have two or
yeah.
three units running there. It's Russian technology. So what do you see from a Indian market perspective? You work there too. What are the big limitations that for India to achieve this bigger ambitions?
So I think if we learn from Kulam, uh, we failed in getting the public opinion in favor first place. So that's the most important thing for India as well. There are lots of rogue elements and others. I think it's important way before, like whatever sites we have selected. First of all, we shouldn't select a site unless we explain to public what you are getting in terms of enrichment of the area, jobs, opportunity. So Canada has really developed a very good template.
Mm.
We don't move anything forward unless public has agreed to it, period. So once that is done, everything else is now finance. Like having good funding, supply chain is there, lot of smart people. India doesn't lack that. It's where that's the politics, combination of politics and public. We need to address that. Otherwise, we'll be very slow. Like we are very slow, to be honest with you, although we have ambitious plans. But putting a new plan takes a lot of effort, starting with public opinion. But that's it. So once we do that, it's fine. And again, go with what we have been successful before, partner with some of the successful countries like Russia has supported a lot of, like Kudamkulam is all about Russian technology, which is again water cooled. So it's all about having a more like focused approach, not compromising it because of finance, or because nuclear is something you cannot start, stop. It's not a switch type of thing.
Correct.
Everything else like solar and all, they have like 2 to 3 years time frame. You can easily manage that. Nuclear takes a lot of, it's a culture that takes a lot of time, because when you're building a plant, the culture is to basically, if you do something wrong, you report it. Because if you're doing something wrong on the reactor,
Yeah.
and 2 3 years down the line after operation you find it's a big issue, you're gone, your whole asset is gone, everything else is waste. So from culture point of view, we are taught that ask questions, don't shy, and if you are in doubt, stop, don't proceed further. So that kind of mindset
Mhm.
takes a lot of time. Once you have developed that, don't stop it, grow it. And that's what Western world has done a mistake. Like after building so many reactors, we stopped doing it for business purpose, like because market is not. Now we are kind of falling way behind because of that.
Sure, sure. I have just one question before I think we'll probably at least take some questions. We have some nuclear experts also in the call today, like Ajay, Dr. Ajay Kothari. So I know you touched on various technologies, and one of the new kid on the block, it's not really new, but thorium as a fuel source has been really touted to be having a lot of future. Have you? What is your opinion on thorium? Because even going back to India's situation, I know we have a lot of thorium reserves in India.
Thorium requires multiple cycles or stages of nuclear power program. In natural form, thorium-232, it's not a fissile material, it's a fertile material. So you put that in reactor along with other fissile materials, and it becomes fertile. It becomes fissile, thorium-233, after capturing a neutron. Then it can be used as a fuel. So with uranium, it's not like that. Uranium-235 itself is a fissile material. So the technology and supply chain ecosystem, economy of scale, in near future is not there. It's still, I think, at the experimental or prototype scale. You need fast breeder reactors. So first you generate enough what you call fissile uranium, thorium, and then you make reactors. So it's too far away for our immediate need. So for next 15, 20 years, I think rather than going into anything new or anything like that looks shiny and fancy, which some of the tech industries are doing, which is not a good approach to revive new nuclear program. Because once you start failing, with the new technologies, people will lose confidence, financer will lose confidence, then you don't get anywhere. But if you start with the proven technologies, you have a method, because we have done this before, you have a systematic approach to succeed, and then you go to other technologies based on how they're faring in development.
So go with what's tried and tested.
Right, because it's already very difficult, and you do untried and untested with no supply chain, you're bound to be with a lot of setbacks, failures, and then people say, oh, you can't do anything. Let's go back to gas and all that stuff. Yeah.
Sure. I know Dr. Kothari has raised his hand for a while. Let's at least hear from him before we switch
then
to other
Kumbu.
questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Well, I think that I have to disagree a little bit about the thorium thing that you mentioned.
Yeah.
I have obviously I've studied TMSR and lifter and all that for so many years, and um, I have been quite a bit impressed with the potential that they offer, including the fact that we would not have 95% leftover waste product,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
you said,
yeah,
and instead we will have only like 1 to 5%.
yeah,
So that's also very good. And also converting, I mean, obviously converting thorium TH-232 to protactinium, and then later on to uranium-233 is not really a big deal. And I think that India actually is making a mistake in not pursuing the molten salt reactor type.
yeah,
And
yeah,
molten salt reactor, which is thorium dissolved in FLiBe,
yeah,
which is fluorium, lithium, beryllium
yeah,
combination of
yeah,
molten
yeah,
salt.
yeah,
That really is quite very interesting because of all of those reasons. Plus, it does not require high pressure domes
yeah,
like
yeah,
the PWRs and the pressurized water reactors require, which means that it cannot blow up in the same way. It cannot, and have cracks and stuff like that. That's a big plus. The other big plus is that it doesn't have to be near water supply. And
yeah,
I'm still studying that, but it doesn't have to be. That really is a big deal because that means that we can put that in Thar Desert or any, on Southwest in the United States, anywhere, wherever the data center is, or the public is. It doesn't have to be near the water supply and all that. That's a very big plus in my mind also. So considering all of those things, and we know that at ORNL, and you know that, I'm sure,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Weinberg tested this from 65 to 69, and
yeah,
it ran for 4 or 5 years, for, I don't know, 15,000 hours or something, 18,000 hours, something of that type,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
successfully. But it does not create plutonium, which is now to me is a big plus actually, because our need now, at that time, the need for the country was to have plutonium bomb. We don't have
yeah,
that need. We want
that's correct.
something without pollution,
Yeah,
without CO2, without any possibility of blowing up,
mm-hmm,
and things like that. So the Fukushima cannot happen,
mm-hmm,
that kind of a thing. So all of those things combined together, and you showed a slide of I think it was an exponential on the abscissa.
yeah,
Uh,
logarithm,
so
yeah,
it was kind of difficult to really realize visually that the footprint of this is so much better. And of course, obviously, the energy released here is 1,000,000 times more per kilogram or per unit weight than chemical. A
yeah,
million times more,
yeah, yeah,
which is
mhm,
absolutely amazing that we are not looking at that as a solution which can help the climate, which can help the pollution, and especially in India, the pollution is terrible.
yeah,
So
mhm,
in India, I think, and India has 1 million ton of thorium.
that's correct.
And I mean, it was the highest number until China declared, I think was maybe 3 months ago, that they found so much thorium that they'll be able to power themselves for 60,000 years. I don't
Yeah,
agree. I don't think it is 60,000 years. But even if it is 10,000 years, they don't need SBSP, which is the space-based solar power. They don't need solar. They don't need wind. They don't need any of those things. They will not. I mean, they don't. They still have in the mess up. But the thing is that it can really be a huge revolution for China. And if India does not follow that, and if we in this country do not follow this, we'll be host. So I think that it's a very important thing that we pay a lot of attention to this particular possibility and develop it,
yeah. Yeah, I fully agree with you, Dr. Kothari. There's no doubt in terms of potential viability. When I was in India in 1990, There
Yeah.
was a lot of talk about having a thorium cycle or three-stage nuclear program.
Right. Yeah.
So 1990, 2035, 35 years, what have we done? Have we added any megawatt to the grid? So my point, I'm talking commercial. Like right now, the need is adding clean power to the grid, adding reliable power to the data centers. Are you comfortable putting a thorium reactor for next 10 years? Don't think so. But it's the leadership, the policy. They should think in terms of having a parallel, robust program. By now, we should have 2 or 3 prototypes or at least one commercial reactor to show. So our leadership is a leadership failure, collective leadership failure.
Right.
I'm pretty hopeful China will be successful because it's a state-owned organization. They basically force people to stay focused and run with. Once they realize there is something successful, they do very well. India doesn't very well on that front.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, my point is if we are really serious, like by 2050 is not far. And 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 from that point of view, I don't see anything else apart from a technology that's similar to 600 water-cooled operating reactors. Use that OPEX to add those. Like after 15 years, I'm comfortable to look at some of these new technologies that can reliably add value to the grid or value to the system. Because if I start with those new stuff right now, and I'm looking to add commercial power, reliable power, I think people will say, what are you doing? Like, are you serious? Like you're saying you will have a thorium reactor for 10 gigawatt or even molten salt, Kairos Power, X Energy. There are some molten salt company, they are claiming even TerraPower, the Bill Gates company.
Well, Copenhagen
Yeah,
Atomic is already
Copenhagen, yeah,
building.
Copenhagen. So
Atomic.
they're all claiming we don't know the chemistry, corrosion history, OPEX, how long that reactor will last. They are still learning. They're still learning online monitoring or online corrosion like purification system. That's still under development. So there's a lot of moving part and nuclear, and there is no supply chain for that. For water cooled, at least there is a lot of supply chain across the world, so they can help us move forward. So I'm saying do that for first 15 years, have the ecosystem build up for new nuclear program, at least in the Western world, and then pick up the thorium and whatever we want to do and let them develop and fund them enough, the other stream, because we need high power, high temperature process heat, and water cooled reactor cannot do that. For
Cannot do that.
hydrogen generation, water cooled cannot do that. Decarbonization of various other industry, they need high temperature reactors. So I'm in favor of all that, but not to start with that.
No, I'm not saying that we
Yeah.
should just do that. I'm saying
Yeah.
that do that as
And-
also along with
Yeah.
the PWRs, along with the water cooled reactors,
Yeah.
while
Yeah.
while they are adding to the grid, but don't dislodge this.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm not
Situation.
disclosing anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, if Modi and Trump invites me on their advisory board, I will tell them
They'll be-
that make the
No, they'll be
reactor,
happy to
the
do that.
proven reactor first, and then keep on funding the other things.
Now that you mention it, I'll just say that I'm meeting JD Vance tomorrow.
Oh,
very
cool.
good.
I
Okay.
plan to.
Very good. Very good.
Well,
Yeah, that's
I
good.
mean, I will plan to talk about this to his chief of staff.
Yeah,
Probably.
that's good. I think that's the whole idea of my reaching out, because some people have more reach to the politicians and influential people. So at least through me, I can convince, and then if you have a reach,
Yeah.
you talk to them, and let's make it happen.
Sure.
Yeah, let's talk offline
Yeah.
also.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Kothari. There are a couple of other raised hands, so let's move on quickly. And I have a couple of good number of questions coming in, So, Kumu, do you have a question to ask? I know you've been very patient. If you want to go ahead and ask the question.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yeah, thank you. This has been a very enlightening talk, very inspirational, like positive on nuclear energy. It's the first time I'm hearing a very positive bent to the whole thing. So my question is, I mean, we had a plant here too in Massachusetts. They shut it down, and so this thing with the Fukushima, right? What is the reality today in terms of the aftermath? Like, because I heard things that, again, I could be wrong, but that the government is not telling the truth, that they're saying everything is safe now, but apparently they hire these companies to do these reports in terms of the contamination levels and whatnot. Because it was pretty bad. Like I had heard when it happened that the cow's milk in Seattle was contaminated from that. So it traveled that far. So that is one question. The second question is a very, very worrisome, timely question that can you talk about, like, if they drop this B-52 on top of that thing in Iran, are we prepared? Because, like, I'm in Boston, so it's the East Coast. So that contamination through the air, through the water, everything is going to come this side, or even and also perhaps India or the whole world. I don't know. So no one is talking about the preparation. What should we do? Things like that. So how dangerous would it be if they did that for humans?
I think if we talk about the current scenario in Mid East, uh, probably that would be the last step if anyone would have to take. And I think I'm pretty positive that this step won't be taken. But if it's taken, it's a pretty serious because at this point we don't know how much uh, fissile material, or we call it source term. Whenever a reactor is designed, by source term, we mean if a major accident happens, how much of radiation can spread around the area. So the source term for that is not known because Iran is keeping it very secret. So it will be foolish on behalf of the Western world to try to destroy that. I would rather go some, I mean, little bit of if shove come to push, if you can get rid of the leadership and then go inside and see what's going on, that's a better approach rather than just throwing a bomb on top of that. I would like that would be a like we are if that happens, I would say everyone is foolish.
Yeah. Also, on the Japan
The
Fukushima
Fukushima.
disaster, uh, to me, a little bit of what I know, I think what Kumar, you were talking about is some early traces were found in Seattle's milk, like in 2011, right after the disaster happened. And interestingly, I mean, it's not uh, even Japan stopped their nuclear program of at
Yeah.
least for a couple of years, and they couldn't last it, and that didn't last for long. Like in few years, they went back after doing a lot of safety checks, etc. Today, you talked about Germany, the much talked about country where it just completely reversed, and now they are going back. So it's a must in I would say in today's energy power hungry energy environment as well as for energy security. There's no other base load stable power that we could get. I mean, you could talk about, more about contamination if you have a
Yeah.
insight or two to
So from
share.
contamination, I have one of the industry level, like world level expert has done a radiation study. And although the the margins that we keep for radiation protection, like limits, they are like order of magnitude lower than what can be tolerated by environment or human body. So for sure, we have exceeded the regulatory limits, but still they are well below the harming level to human beings. And in fact, many parts of the world have much higher radiation level where people are living. So
Exactly.
some of that is misinformation. Closer to the plant, I can agree that there's an environmental impact, vegetation as well as animals being, but it's way less than what happened in Chernobyl, which we are not making that type of reactors anymore. And the long-term effect, there's a lot of studies going on, the impact of radiation on human bodies and environment and animals, which will come out in few years from now. But I don't think there's a huge. I won't say it's a no issue, but probably it's nothing more than uh, like big pollutions that is happening in some of the cities and all. And in some ways, some of the radiations, if if the level is well within certain limits is beneficial for human body. That also has
Exactly.
been shown by various studies. So, I mean, these hearsays and these things, there's a lot of science behind radiation and impact of radiation or interaction of radiation on human organs and all. But I haven't seen any report that's kind of totally like scientific report that's saying that it has really damaged the ecosystem in Japan or in the surroundings.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a very valid point. Like Vinod said, worldwide in many areas, there's naturally occurring radiation, in the air, in the environment, maybe because of, the various minerals that we have around us. So as long as the levels are below the regulated and the permissible levels, I think, so far, I guess we don't have any facts that prove otherwise, right? It's still safe. I think they took a very valid, much informed decision when they even dumped a lot of radioactive material back into the ocean. This happened like in 2, 3 years back after Fukushima, after doing a lot of studies, after doing that for several years. And the amounts that's put back into the ocean is the levels were much, much lesser than what's, deemed to be dangerous. So there is just one question from Qasim here. It talks about the SMR model. BWRX 300 is very close to you in Darlington, I guess. Uses graphite moderators, much like the Russian reactors used in Chernobyl. I don't know, is there a concern or some kind of observation that Qasim has posed? I mean, is that an issue using graphite moderators?
No, that's not an issue at all. Boiling water reactors, like 20% of the reactors across the worldwide are boiling water. India has one in Tarapur.
Mm.
So the Russian reactor was graphite cooled and moderated. And the other thing with the Russian reactor was that the reactor protection system wasn't designed to the modern standard in terms of how it can move and how fast you can move out. So as a part of the business or management strategy, they tried to pull out the reactor protection system out of the core, which leads to high fission rate and high heat power. And then it went out of control. So there's no similarity between what Russian reactor was as compared to BWR.
Okay, great. Dinesh asked this question, and I think this is probably in everybody's mind, right? I think we talk about Yucca Mountain in in the U.S. As soon as when it comes to, people call them nuclear waste. As nuclear enthusiasts, we call them spent fuel because they are really, like you said, there's still so much they're potent. But the general concern is, what about this long-term disposal of radioactive waste? Putting stuff in underground caves, which is the Yucca Mountain. But I mean, I would go one step beyond that in saying, yes, it's a normal concern, but worldwide, like France and I guess Finland, some other countries, they've actually managed to even repurpose this fuel. And, because it has more potent energy left in it, they are reusing it. So one, on this current status of saving them, I think you touched upon it earlier, that's safe and everything. But how about repurposing it or reusing it? Because these are renewable energy sources again, right?
Yeah. So France has tried, UK has tried. The challenge with repurposing is the science is there, but it's a little bit more complicated and difficult if you don't have an economy of scale. So, in my opinion, this has to be a collective effort by various countries, like-minded countries, like developed countries, Western world, including US, Canada, France, Sweden, Japan. If they can join and have a centralized 2 or 3 locations where they reprocess fuel, and there are a couple of technologies I worked on. Moltex Energy, they are trying to repurpose the CANDU nuclear reactor fuel. There's one in US, Epsilon or something like that. They are also trying. It's again, as Dr. Kothari mentioned, like, again, lots of potential, but the policies and finance is not there to support them. So that's why, as an interim strategy, what we are doing, what Canada is doing, recently announced, they're taking 20 years to build a underground repository to store the used fuel in
Mm.
secure containers with all the monitoring and features and facilities, so that we can withdraw it later when we are ready with the newer technologies. Uh, at this point, I think we are falling behind on adding megawatts to the grid.
Mhm.
So that part is more critical. It's not that we are not worried about waste or we are just negligent. It's not. It's all contained. It's well contained, well controlled, well monitored. Everything is like decay heat removal of used fuel. We are properly managing the whole thing,
Yeah.
but it's an interim strategy. For now, for next 20 years, we need to add lots of gigawatts to the grid, that so that we can stabilize and we can secure our energy. That's the number one priority from financing and policy point of view. In the background, there's still these technologies are working on, but they're not, like, the pace of progress is not to my liking. Like, they should be moving faster than the way we are progressing them. So it's a combination of multitude of technologies that have to progress together, with the highest priority to adding megawatt to adding power to the grid.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, that was very, very useful. One last question as a common man. I mean, it's there are more questions on the same topic. To finish that topic, would you, if your state or your province has a repository of the spent fuel, uh, would you advise that it's safe to live next to them? Because
Yes,
it's a common
yeah,
concern.
yeah. So what we have done, the there are spent fuel storage building. We took our leaders and many players, and we sat beside that and ate dinner there.
Mm,
Is that safe? So you can eat around it. It's that safe.
sure.
So because the shielding containment is so well managed, we are not allowing anything to happen. So the cask itself is like hundreds of tons, which is containing only maybe 2-3 tons of fuel.
Sure.
So everything else is shielding. So it's not unsafe in any ways. It's much safer than many of the things we do at home.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, wonderful. Ravi asked this question about, on the positive side, is a lot of energy applications in data centers.
Yeah.
So he like you to comment on how are they progressing? Is there more adoption coming on the way?
Yeah, so there is more adoption. The way I advise data centers or tech companies, I don't think we have too much of additional nuclear capacity is available for data centers per se, because it's all being tapped into other things.
Yeah.
The way I look at it is, first of all, they're way behind the curve, like in terms of asking for nuclear energy. They should have done this 10 years back.
Exactly.
But that bygone is bygone. But going forward, we need to have a comprehensive strategy for data centers in particular. If they are serious about decarbonization and nuclear power, they should start funding all the nuclear power projects that either in the grid, like they can get the power from grid, or they can have standalone SMR for their data centers.
Yeah.
So plan for 15, 20 years, fund it while the SMR is being built and commissioned and has a commercial viability or commercial operation. You try other sources to run your data centers. I don't think people are stopping data centers. If I tell them, no, you wait for nuclear, no, they're not. So they're putting data centers every 2 to 3 years, 4 years, and nuclear takes around 10 years if you start now for proven technology, because we don't have yet fully oiled, well-oiled supply chain. So initial hiccups will still be there. So I say 10 to 15 years. So in that, you have a bridging strategy, use natural gas or whatever, solar energy storage, do whatever you want to do to meet your needs, but keep an eye on nuclear. Don't lose the sight. And that's what we have been doing. As I said, we are spoiled with choices. Once we have a choice, we don't think beyond 4 or 5 years, 3 years. And then we fall apart in terms of lagging behind, catching up, and then we keep on talking about problem with technology, problem with regulator. In first place, we didn't plan it very well in terms of our needs.
Sure. Thank you. One of those, I guess maybe it's a good question to answer. Maybe I'll keep that as the last question, Vatsala. Because Detroit, we are rooted in the automotive industry here. So a lot of our members are from the automotive industry. So Tarun, I guess it's the same Tarun who works at GM, asked this question: is there a cost advantage in nuclear power over fossil fuels from building to operating? I know it's a loaded question. It's not just a simple one answer. When you compare nuclear with fossil fuel, I mean, I would say any day in sleep, nuclear is better. But we like to hear from you. What are your?
Yeah, so fossil plants, their life cycle is short compared to nuclear, like maybe half. Like gas plant runs like 25, 30 at most.
Yeah.
And also at the same time, if you look at the carbon footprint, if you price that into the dynamics and economy, and if you price the reliability and stability of the grid, nuclear power is a winner by all means.
Sure.
So you need to do a proper math, compare apple with apple, not just say that I'm like normally you say $2,000 per megawatt is gas, nuclear is starting 5,000 or something. But you need to compare the full life cycle, then nuclear will come up.
Sure. Yeah. I
Muthu,
mean,
there's one last question from Prateen as well.
oh, sorry. Yeah, Prateen has raised his hand. Prateen, is there a question or he wants to talk?
Yeah.
So if there is a couple of minutes, I would like to ask two things.
Sure.
One is, first of all, thank you, Vinod, for presenting this, because for me, this is the first session in my life to understand about nuclear.
Okay, thank you.
So one of the objectives achieved, that learning out of these sessions, which is good. Question is, you mentioned in the beginning or maybe middle of your session that people in India or everywhere else, that's a key part of it to get the nuclear plant. So what are your suggestions to make them aware? Like the generation is between 30 and 50 years old. How do we make them aware?
Yeah, I think education system has to improve. So if you start teaching kids like grade 8, 9, and 10, and they will teach their parents very well. You don't teach parents directly. So improve your education. You have a very good session on nuclear power, why it is important, or clean energy in general. I think that's the most effective way. And of course, the outreach, you carry on with your university outreach and sessions normally city hall meetings with the city mayor and all, invite everyone there. So attack from all sides. Don't try to when you start pushing parents from top and bottom with kids and all, I think they'll start understanding. And look at the influence like pollution and all the negative effects of carbon footprint that is having on our life, health. If you Google it or chat GPT about the impact of carbon on human life, you'll be surprised. Like we don't, it doesn't look apparent, reduced lifespan and bad health, like life of quality and all. If you add all that, nuclear comes at the top. Like you need to consider all aspects: human life, environmental impact, and the clean energy itself, reliability, stable life, growth. You need to add those elements into the financial aspect. Don't just look at the capex, opex based on certain numbers. So you need to do a comprehensive view why nuclear is so important. And I would be happy if someone can come up with other things. Geothermal has some potential, but it is not for every location. Certain areas you can really tap into geothermal, very clean, reliable natural source of energy. Apart from that, hydro we discussed, wind and solar for homes, smaller loads, little bit here and there. With battery energy, that works. For larger loads, I won't go into wind and solar, or I would definitely go into a grid which is fully supported by wind and solar. So we need to have a mix of energy, and nuclear has a key role, as I said, 30 to 40%, and will be good to go. If everything else fails, nuclear will support your essential services and all.
Yeah, no, thank you very much.
Wonderful. Vatsala, over to you. Thank you. Thank you, Vinod.
So we all know that it has been a really illuminating session we have experienced this ourselves. So thank you, Vinod. Your 3 decades of experience came alive today as you painted a vision of nuclear energy that extends far beyond the traditional power plant. What struck me most profoundly was how you transformed our understanding of nuclear technology from something we once viewed with caution to something we now see as essential for humanity's sustainable future. Muthu, your thoughtful questions during the fireside chat brought out nuances that only come from deep industry experience. So, thank you. And to every participant who joined us today, your curiosity fuels our mission. The questions you asked and the engagement you showed proved that our community remains passionate about engineering solutions that can change the world. And to the behind the scenes rock stars who made this webinar seamless, you are the quiet force powering our progress. As we log off today, we carry with us a renewed sense of purpose. Nuclear energy isn't just about splitting atoms, it's about splitting apart the barriers to a sustainable, prosperous future for all. Thank you once again. Stay energized, stay curious, and definitely become a part of ASCI.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you,
having
Vatsala.
me. Thank you for listening, all of you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
We have a couple of minutes, so if people still have any questions or anything, they can.
You can
So I
hang
think,
on and unmute
yeah.
yourself and ask away.
Yeah, I think those who still, there were some questions from
Parth,
people. And
Parth and
I know that
Qasim.
Qasim was there. He was actively writing over there, but I think he's left, right? Is he still there?
Yeah,
I don't see it.
but we answered most of
Most
Qasim's
of the
questions.
Yeah. And
Parth.
yeah, so there's, and Parth, I see that Parth had a question.
Yeah.
You want
Parth?
to unmute yourself, Parth? Maybe. I think meanwhile, I see one from Kumu. She raised her hand again. Is there a question for you from you, Kumu?
Yeah, is it possible to get the Vinod's contact?
Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
send
sure.
it to you.
Yeah. Feel free to reach out on LinkedIn or directly via email. I'll be happy to address if that falls under my preview, or I will point to the right people who can help you.
Yeah, because I did my research at Brookhaven and we had they had nuclear research back then, so I still have interest.
Thank you.
If I can just make a comment, I think I'm very thankful for ASCI Michigan chapter for doing this. And thank you to Vinod and also to Muthu for this thing. This is really a good thing for an engineering society to be doing. And I think that, something of this type that you did is, thank you very much for doing that. That's all.
Thank you, Dr. Kothari. Yeah, always you've been very supportive. You've spoken in many of our conferences. So experts like you keep us also motivated.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor. I think the context, when we had a IIT reunion, who did I meet as a first person after 35 years? That was Lalita. So we just reached as the breakfast table in one of the IIT hostel, or it was a guest house. I was surprised, oh, you're Lalita. Then we ate breakfast. That was our first reunion after 35 years. And that's where this idea came. Okay, we'll have something like this. So thank you, Lalita.
Yeah, and so glad that we could really make this happen.
Yeah, no, Dr. Ajay, if you want to have separate chat or any discussion around this topic, I'll be happy to at least share my perspective, because it's important to understand. And I fully agree. Like, I've seen a lot of potential in various type of what you call design or approaches across the national labs in USA. I was at the ANS conference, 1,500 people, and talking to various strategies. I think problem we have in our industry is that the output from the scientific community is not translating into the real world success.
Right.
We are just spinning wheels and then feeling happy about it, and we just go home and then we forget. So that direction, that strategy has to come at a policy level. Okay, you have this objective, I will giving you this much money, this time frame, go and do it. That kind of strategy is not there. We are just pleasing hundreds of scientists, maybe even thousands, giving each of them like $10,000, $20,000, $50,000. Go and do your own thing. Whether it's like school, universities, they come up with ideas, then they leave to other places. So everything stops and starts. So that's not how we can grow or make new things. China is doing much better from that point of view, like integration of the scientific community with the real world, with the industry. I think we should take a leaf from China. Even like Canada or UK is not that great from that point of view. So we are losing something in that mix.
Yes, absolutely right. I think that China actually ran a molten salt reactor and continuously fueled it also recently. That came out. So it's just really quite amazing what they are doing. And I'm really very chagrined and upset that India is not doing the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah, I think like sometimes democracy is not very helpful in these type of situations. I wonder, like, if you look at the US nuclear program development, it was done by military. And then handed over to civil, and we started messing it up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Because it was most of these reactors were built when there was no NRC, there was no regulatory body. They just went and did it, and they're still running after decades.
Yeah.
And we didn't get a chance to. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Well, I was saying, as we like, in the name of brainstorming, we do brainstalling.
Yeah.
In public space.
Yeah. Just like and I think we didn't really discuss much. I'm a rocket scientist, an aerospace engineer, so the application of nuclear power for space, and not just for off-planet energy on the moon and stuff, which I've been looking at, but also for propulsion and things. It's just really also it's something which is quite necessary. It's unfortunately that they canceled DRACO program of DARPA and NASA, but we'll have to change that hopefully soon.
I saw a presentation. They're trying to revive it again. So we discussed like surface nuclear technologies for outer space and then propulsion. So there is some intention. But as I said, if you leave it to the public domain in a democratic setup, these things don't move very fast. So I told them, you give it to military for some certain maturity level, let them bring it to TRL 6 and 7, then you start doing it. Because before that, it's quite intensive, and people just take pride in producing papers and making presentation, and and they get rewarded for that. I really feel shameful that this is how far we have come in terms of our even reward structure. You are rewarded for producing paper, not for making something commercial or real.
Yeah.
Such a good observation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay. All right. No, that was good. And let me know if you need anything else or any deep dive or anything related to this topic. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
And we do have the YouTube link, so that can be shared with everyone.
I think I've already shared that, but it will be like they can leave it, view it offline also, correct?
Sure.
Yes.
Recorded version. Okay. Thank you.